Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica. Today we are on part 2 of my quilt pattern trunk show. So in my last trunk show, I did all of my kind of seasonal or even non-seasonal quilt patterns. And then in today's video, part 2 of that series is going to be just my Christmas quilts. I wanted to break it up because that first video was getting really long. There's a lot of fun quilts in there, but I thought Christmas could just use its own section because I have quite a few Christmas patterns. Now I have a lot of Christmas quilts, but I also have a lot of fun, smaller Christmas projects like stockings and pot holders and tree skirts and table runners, pillows. So stick around and let's dive right in. So we're going to start off with my bundles, and so we're starting off with our quilty ornaments. These are 12 days of quilty ornaments. You guys have probably all seen these. We did them last year, and they were so much fun. So each day we did a different ornament, and then by the end we had a Christmas tree full of fun quilty ornaments. I also have a cross-stitch version of this one as well. It's absolutely adorable, and for the most part they match. I mean, you can do a little more with cross-stitch than you can with a small quilt block, so they're slightly different, but they go together really well. For this one, I used just scraps. Because these blocks are so small, it's really easy to put them together with your scrap bin. So I highly suggest just diving into whatever scraps you have and making good use of those. These were from my Sweetwater Christmas collection. So there's a ton of different Sweetwater Christmas lines in mine, kind of a variety, but they all went together really well and they were so fun. And like I mentioned, all of these are traditionally pieced. There's nothing super difficult or complicated about them. They are a little bit smaller, so I do suggest using like a Mary Ellen's Best Press before you cut out your pieces. That way they won't stretch or get wonky. Sometimes when you're working with smaller blocks, it's a little harder because you have to be a little bit more precise. So just take your time with them, have fun. But these are probably one of my best sellers. They're so much fun. And again, that was the 12 days of quilty ornaments. And yes, I am doing another one for 2022. So we're going to have a 2022 version of the 12 days of quilty ornaments and stitchy ornaments. So that will be coming soon. I'm not going to give any sneak peeks yet. So stay tuned. Just keep an eye out for it. Here is the 12 days of stitchy ornaments version. If you want to see that, they do correlate with the 12 days of quilty ornaments. And these are also available PDF or paper. All right, so we are going to dive into our Christmas quilts. There's a lot of them, so brace yourself because Christmas quilts are one of my faves. I make 1 or 2 every year, and so they're just piling up. So here we go. We're just going to go in, I think, alphabetical order. So we're going to start off with Christmasville. This is literally one of my favorite quilts, and when I was making it, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, and I almost didn't release it because I thought, I don't know. My husband actually thought that these bigger ones looked like barns, and I really wanted them to look like houses, and so I was just like, I don't know, but it was all already put together. And so I was like, should I remake it? Once I got it done and quilted, oh my gosh, I love it so much. It features these cute little houses, or if you want to think this one's a barn, that's fine. I don't think it matters. It has some trees in the middle. We've got a couple stars in the sky, and then it has this cute little dashed, which kind of was candy cane-y to me, border here, sashing. And then I did a really fun red border, again, my background fabric, and then my wider border. And then just to make it a little bit bigger, I added one more border right here on the outside edge. And then I did a red binding. And so, oh my gosh, this quilt finishes at 84 by 84, so it's a really good size quilt. I did do my Moda 9997 backing because there was so much going on in here. I didn't want the background to take away from any of that. But oh my gosh, this quilt is so fun. And as large as it is, I'm still going to call this beginner friendly because the pieces are actually quite large. There's nothing super tricky in here at all. Probably the hardest part is really just this dashed border right here, or sashing, and that's only because it gets stretchy. When you have a lot of seams like that, it gets stretchy and you kind of have to fit it in. But honestly, it kind of doesn't matter because I have red on both edges here, and so if you have to trim off just a little bit to make it the right size as your row of houses, I mean, who's going to even notice that you did that? So I am going to still say beginner friendly. I mean, there's a lot of pieces in here, so maybe beginner intermediate, but there's no tricky sewing at all. Now for the fabric for this, I actually used my Sweetwater fabric, and most of these are going to be from Sweetwater. I think they have the most amazing Christmas lines. I love them, and I have a ton of it. So again, I'm trying to sew through my stash, and so a lot of these use a similar fabric line, which kind of works out because they all sort of go together when I have them in my house, and so it kind of looks like I planned it that way, but really I'm just trying to use my fabric, but I also love it. So Sweetwater fabric, Christmasville 84 by 84. The next one I have is Merry Noel, and I love this so much. I actually lined the back of this with a furry kind of fleece lining. So this quilt is incredibly heavy because I also used batting. So it is so cozy and comfy and perfect for wintertime. And it features these giant stars. The blocks are huge with a really fat sashing. And this is actually quite fast and easy to put together, but because these sashing pieces are so wide, it does take up quite a bit of fabric. It finishes at 66 by 87, but you can definitely make it larger by putting another row of blocks. I actually ran out of some enough fabric to make an extra row on this, so I would have loved to make it a little bit larger, but I do put this on the bottom of our bed, and it just goes right along the bottom of it, and it's so much fun. The stars come together really easily. They are larger pieces, so totally beginner friendly and fun to put together. And I keep saying beginner friendly, but all of my patterns have written instructions plus graphic illustrations for each step. So you can read it and then you can actually see it. And of course you can always email me if you have any questions, but hopefully the patterns will make it so easy for you to put together. So this one is Merry Noel. My next quilt is called Peppermint Pines, and this one is so much fun. Again, totally beginner friendly. We've got some fun little pinwheels in here, and then a traditional Irish chain border, and then of course some fun Christmas trees. And this one finishes at about 74 by 86, so it's a really fun size. It's really fast and easy to put together. For this one I used Hollyberry by Corey Yoder, and this might be one of my favorite Christmas lines. It's just so kind of clean and just light and beautiful, and I love it so much. Now I did use my standard 9997 backing on this, but I think a really light low volume print would also be fun. And then I did those gray pieces for that Irish chain, and then those red pops for the pinwheels. I also did a little red outline border and then another background border, and then I used a dark gray from that line for the binding. This one is completely beginner friendly. And I know Irish chains, when I first started quilting, I was like, I don't understand how that goes together. And it looks like they're put on point or something like that, but they're not at all. It's really fast and easy to put together. Give it a try. I think you're going to love it. And there's nothing tricky in it. It really just comes together so fast. So I love Peppermint Pines. I love the fabric. This is just one of my all-time faves. Okay, let's move on to Snowy Day. Snowy Day is, I'm gonna say this is more of an intermediate pattern just because the amount of piecing and this back of the truck here has a lot of little pieces in there, but then some of these other blocks like these are just super easy. So I definitely suggest that you give it a try. This one finishes at 76 by 88. It's a really great size quilt. So I wanted to do something a little different with this quilt, and so I added in some of that puffy like Sherpa fleece. So I've got some right here, I've got some right here, and then I have some right here. Now you can of course just use your regular quilting cotton fabric for that. I just wanted to kind of give it just some texture, and it was so much fun. It's a little bit tricky to work with, but once you get it all sewn in, it's totally fine. And then instead of binding this quilt, I actually took the quilt top and the batting and I quilted it all together. And then I placed my quilt top or my quilt backing right side down on top of the quilt top, stitch around the edge, left an opening, flipped it right side out just like I do like my bags, and then stitched that closed. And then I stitched around the outside edge just to kind of keep everything in place. And then I also did some hand quilting on this. I just did some little black like X's, just evenly spaced all the way around, which I thought was fun. And then I did take my machine and just do a couple of stitches along, just in the ditch along some of these straighter pieces, just to hold it so that it didn't come apart from the backing. I also did some hand stitching on these blocks and just here and there, just to kind of give it that hand touched feel. This one is also a mix of my Sweetwater Fabric Christmas lines, and I just pulled from my stash. So this is a bunch of different lines from them. And then I've got some of my Moda 9997 white in there, and I just kind of mixed and matched for this quilt. And I even did a little bit of embroidery on top for the steam in the cup and the smoke coming out of the chimney in that house. The other cool thing about this quilt, if you notice, is that it features a variety of different blocks. These are perfect to take and just make on their own and make into a little pillow. You can do the little North Pole flag or the little truck backing. I did that, turned him into a pillow. You could even do, you know, this little snowman pillow or the coffee cup. I mean, all the individual blocks are so versatile. You could put them all together in a table runner or table topper or a little pillow or a little wall hanging. So this quilt is actually quite versatile. There are a lot of pieces in this quilt. I'm gonna go ahead and call it intermediate just because of that. It's nothing, there's no Y seams or anything hard like that. It's all standard traditional piecing, but still a lot of pieces, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it intermediate, but Snowy Day is so much fun to make. I definitely recommend. Okay, we're gonna get into Vintage Christmas. This was the very first quilt pattern that I ever put out, and I think it is still one of my best sellers. So this quilt finishes at 69 by 74, and this used a line called Mistletoe Lane by Bunny Hill Fabrics, and it was just a beautiful red and green and tan in there. I mean, oh my gosh, these prints were so fun. So of course this features my vintage truck with a little Christmas tree in the back and then some forest trees around it, and it's still my favorite quilt. I don't actually have this anymore because I actually gave it to Jason's grandma. Jason's my husband, if you're new here, his grandma for Christmas. And then when she passed away, it was passed down to my mother-in-law. So she still has it. I can always get it back if I need to borrow it or take pictures. Vintage Christmas was really my first vision for a quilt ever. I put this out, gosh, in 2016. So it's been out for quite a while. And oh my gosh, it's just the most fun quilt to put together. There's a lot of white space in here, so a lot of fun that you can have with your quilting. My tester made it with, instead of using the white like I did, she used a little snowflake print by Sweetwater, and oh, it looks so fun and cozy. So have fun with this. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you for everyone who has purchased it, because this is what kicked off my entire pattern writing career, and it is still one of my faves. Now, because I didn't have this anymore and I knew I wanted to make another one, I went ahead and decided to make a Vintage Christmas 2. So Vintage Christmas 2 is a take on my original Vintage Christmas, but I added some new fun elements. This one finishes at 74 by 83, so it's a great size quilt, and I added some presents in the back of the truck this time. I did some fun pinwheels for the sashing just to add a little bit more extra, and then I did a really cute holly border around the outside. Now, when I was debating on this quilt, I had white border on the outside of the holly just to kind of make that holly pop. And I was like, should I do something else? Should I do another border, another color? And my tester and also a friend was like, no, leave it white. It looks really cool. And so I did, and I am so glad I did. That white just really makes the elements of the quilt pop. It makes that holly border around the outside pop, and it's just so much fun. Now, it's not perfect white. I actually used a print that's a white on white print from Sweetwater Fabric. It was from one of their older lines that I had in my stash, and it's like a little checkerboard or kind of gingham print, but it's really hard to see on camera. So it's just a white on white print, but it's like a creamy white. So it's not like stark in your face white, and it just makes this quilt so cozy and comfy, and I love it so much. So this one, again, for the actual prints, was a mix of my Sweetwater lines that I had in my stash, just a variety of them, and I really just went through a lot of those fabrics and just pulled out what I thought went together and put them together, and oh my gosh, I had so much fun. This would be another perfect quilt to take that truck with those presents and make it into a pillow, or even the trees and make them into a pillow. You could do one of each and have that on your couch for the season, and oh, it'd be so cute. You could also do a table runner as well, maybe two, a tree block on both sides and then your truck in the middle, and such a cute table runner. So I need to do that. It's on my list. I'm really bad about making those extra elements with my quilt patterns, and I always say I'm going to, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. So I really need to try and get that done this year. But Vintage Christmas 2, another one of my faves. All right, so my last larger quilt for Christmas is called Winterberry. This is definitely one of my all-time favorite quilts, and it is so much fun to put together. Now, I am going to label this as intermediate because of the amount of pieces in this quilt. There are just a lot of small pieces, but again, it's no Y seams, no tricky seams. It's all very straightforward. There's just a lot of pieces. It features these fun, I'm kind of thinking poinsettia-y type blocks with the little mittens with snowflakes on them, and then the little kind of zigzag sashing. And I just want it to be kind of like a traditional Fair Isle knitted blanket sweater kind of type vibe, and I think it really just turned out exactly what I had in my mind, which that isn't always what happens. So Winterberry, I have a friend, my tester, who did this, did it in blue and white, and it was beautiful. So I think also a gray and white would be really fun. I'm not a huge fan of green, but green and white would also be a good option. But red and white is really what I wanted. And then for this particular quilt, I actually did it a little bit differently. And so instead of doing a binding, I did a self-binding with a fur backing. So I do have instructions on how to do that in this pattern with pictures and everything. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do a video tutorial here for self-binding. I just haven't had a chance. It's on my list, but it turned out so fun. So the border is just this furry border. I did quilt the quilt top and batting separately, quilted that all up, and then did the self-binding with the fur, and then I went around again and did some stitch in the ditches just to kind of hold it in place so it didn't come apart when it was getting used. This quilt is almost always being used by one of my daughters. She has it on her bed all Christmas long, and because she likes the fur on the back of it, she keeps it on even past Christmas. She just puts another blanket on top of it. So I always have to go and steal it from her when I am taking pictures. But this one is Winterberry. If you're looking for a little more of a challenge, I highly recommend it. It's not, like I said, super hard. It's just a lot of pieces, and it's beautiful. Another fun quilt that I made this past year was my gingham quilt, and this one comes in a variety of sizes. It is a free tutorial here on YouTube. I went ahead and made the king size quilt because I've never made a quilt for our bed, and I wanted a fun Christmas quilt to put on there. This quilt is super easy, it's super fast, and it's perfect for beginners. So for my quilt, I actually used some of, again, my Sweetwater reds. I love those reds. And I used a kind of a more solid red, and then I used like a houndstooth red, which served as my medium print, and then I used 9900-97 white Bella solid for the light print. And really that's all you need is 3 different prints for this quilt. And then of course you just sew the squares together. It's so fast and easy. And so like I said, this pattern comes in a bunch of different sizes. It also includes pattern for pillows, matching pillowcases, and I did that here on YouTube as well, so you can check both of those tutorials out. This was such a fun pattern to make. It was also extremely beginner friendly and easy, so if you haven't checked out the gingham quilt and matching pillowcases, I definitely recommend. Okay, so that's it for my larger Christmas quilts, but I do have a whole series of smaller Christmas projects that I'm gonna go through really quick. So I hope you guys are here for all the Christmas because I have a lot of it. So we're gonna start off with my Christmas cheer stockings. I put these out several years ago. It's a free tutorial for the basic stocking here on YouTube, and then I have a pattern that I do sell that has a variety of different stockings that go with it. So there's 7 different patterns in there. They're all different and all fun. So the first one is just your basic stocking, which you could do with really any fabric that you wanted. I used, again, my Sweetwater fabrics for all of these. This first basic stocking is actually one of their prints from, I think it was Holly's Tree Farm. And they just always do this really cool kind of colorful print. And I thought that it was really cool on its own. So that's going to be the basic stocking. The second one features just a regular patchwork quilting with, of course, the cute toe and heel with a little bit of hand stitching on there because why not? And then the next one is a snowman. He is so cute. And again, these are smaller pieces, so you might want to Mary Ellen's best press some of these if you want, or just be really careful with your piecing. They're not hard to put together, but they are smaller. The next one's a cute chevron. These are done with half square triangles, so very easy. I also have a little mini house block, which is so fun. And of course you can do some embroidery on that with like the steam coming out of the roof and things, or the chimney. I also featured a cute little pine tree stocking. And then the last one is some pinwheels. Again, those are so fast and easy to put together. And you can really use the template for those stockings with anything that you want. So if you have another smaller, like say about 6 by 6 quilt block, I think that would fit on there. You could do any design you wanted just using that template. So the Christmas cheer stockings are one of my faves. I also have a really easy patchwork pillow. It's kind of the longer, skinnier patchwork pillows. This one is called Christmas Patchwork Pillow because I'm super creative with my names. I did do a little embroidery on mine. It says, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas," and that is in the pattern, so you can trace that onto your fabric and then stitch, just hand stitch on top of that. And I just used regular DMC floss in a black colorway, and I think I used 3 strands of that. You could use more if you wanted it to be a little bit thicker and more noticeable. So have fun with that. You of course can skip the embroidery if that's not your thing. Okay, let's talk about some more of my Christmasville. Now, I showed my Christmasville quilt earlier, but I have a ton of little side projects that I actually put out a couple years ago, before I did the entire quilt. So the first one is the Christmasville Table Runner. This one features some cute little snowflakes with some trees and a house. The pieces are actually all quite easy to put together, and it just turned out so fun. Of course, I used Sweetwater fabric and 9997 white background. I also did the Christmasville tree skirt. Again, cute little houses. I did some hand embroidery on there for the smoke coming out of the chimneys. There's some fun snowflakes on there, and of course some trees. And the instructions show you how to put this all together, and then you trim it into that circle and go ahead and bind it like you normally would your quilt. And then you can just put that right around the base of your tree, and it turned out so cute. I also did the Joy pillow last year for Vlogmas. That was our mystery sew along. I do have it available in a pattern, and I put it all into one video here on YouTube. And it was so much fun to put together, and I love just doing a little bit of sewing like that every day. I know you guys had to trust me that it was going to turn out cute. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, but the Joy pillow, so that one is really fun. It's a 20 by 20 pillow, so it's a really great size, and of course you can use any fabric you want. And then I did a little embellishment for using a ribbon for the hanger for the little bauble, and I just think it turned out so fun, and that one's totally beginner friendly as well. I also have the Vintage Christmas pillow. This is a small version of my vintage truck with a tree in the back, so it's a little different size than the one on my quilt because I wanted to finish square so that it would be cute for a pillow. And then I did a little green and white kind of candy cane stripe border around the outside of it. I believe this pillow was again 20 by 20. I tend to buy a 22 by 22 insert, and I make my pillows about 20 by 20, and then I can reuse that insert and then just store my pillow tops just flat and then just pull them out for the season and just reuse that pillow. So that's kind of how I roll with pillows, but I think it's a great size and it looks perfect on couches. To go with that, I also did a Vintage Pines pillow. Again, I believe this one is 20 by 20. It used my Sweetwater fabric, and I just did kind of a patchworky tree. So you can use your scraps, perfect for scraps, and just patchwork some greens together, and oh my gosh, turned out so cute. My next mini Christmas pattern is the Wonderland Advent calendar. So it's always been on my list to do a quilted Advent calendar, and so one year I finally bit the bullet and put it together, and oh my gosh, it turned out so cute. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. This one is actually quite easy to put together. There's an adorable row of houses right along the top, and then I put that same kind of Sherpa fleece along the bottom for the snow. Now you could just do that with regular quilting fabric. You don't have to use the fleece. I'm not gonna lie, the fleece was a little hard to do because I wanted it to look scalloped, and so just sewing on those little corners was a little tricky, but the fleece is pretty forgiving and fluffy, so you kind of can't really notice if it doesn't go together exactly perfectly. And I really just think it made the pattern pop. So I highly recommend giving it a shot. It's a little tricky to work with, but I think it turned out great. And on the bottoms, it's really just a solid piece of fabric that we're putting different little square pockets on. And so the square pockets are all made individually. They're all embellished however you want. I used a variety of buttons and ribbons, and I do have printable labels. I have instructions on how to do that, but you can also buy them. Every year Sweetwater, or I don't know if every year, but they do have printable Advent calendar numbers that you can do, and they print it on like a fabric, and then you just peel it off the back and you can sew it into your projects. I went ahead and printed my own, so I bought some inkjet fabric for paper for my printer, ran it through. That file is included in the pattern. I ran it through my printer and then cut it out with pinking shears and then stitched it on each one of my little pockets, and I think they turned out great. So you can do it however you want. You could even write them on there with fabric paints if you wanted as well. I think that would be really cute. But I just embellished all my pockets differently with random laces and buttons that I had laying around. I used a ton of scraps for this project, and then I used some little ribbon ties on the top, and then we hang it up every year. It does come also with printable cards to put in each pocket. So each pocket has a different card with a different fun activity that you can do, and so we just pull them out each day. I try and kind of spread them out. There's baking, there's crafts, there's things like watch a Christmas movie or take a bubble bath or go caroling. So there's a variety of activities in there, and so we just just pull them out and have fun all season long. And then my last thing I have are my Christmas Wonderland pot holders. So there are 6 different pot holders in this series. They're so fast and easy to put together. They're perfect for gifts, but of course I like have them out all Christmas season in my house. But they would be perfect to put into like a little baking gift basket for someone who you know who loves to bake. Throw in a little handmade pot holder. This year I am going to be doing oven mitts, so stay tuned for that. That's on my list to do. But my pot holders feature a cute little Christmas house with a little wreath on top, gingham or kind of patchworky tree. Of course, you can use whatever colors you want. I did mine in like a black and white kind of buffalo check. They have a cute Santa Claus, a little patchwork stocking, one of the little peppermint candies, and then of course a little teacup or hot chocolate cup, however you want to use it. And they all just go together so fun. And these are perfect scrap busters as well. The pieces are smaller. Maybe little Mary Ellen's Best Press would be your friend here, but they're really easy to put together and perfect scrap buster. And then last but not least, I do want to mention my 2 e-courses. So if all of this has inspired you to learn how to quilt, I do have 2 courses available on my website. It's go.confessionsofahomeschooler.com. I will link that below. I have a How to Quilt 101 series, which is really beginner friendly. You're going to be making a really easy patchwork quilt. It goes through all the skills that you need to know, all my favorite tools, where I buy fabric, my sewing machines, and all that good information. And then we're going to be putting together a patchwork quilt, and you will be quilting the whole thing yourself on your domestic sewing machine. So definitely check that out if you're a newbie and you really just want to get the basics down. The follow-up class to that is going to be my more intermediate class. That one is called Scrappy Stars, and we're going to be putting together a star quilt that has 16 different stars in it, plus a beautiful star border. And oh my gosh, it's so much fun. You're going to learn a different skill in every block that we make and really just up your quilting game. So if you want to learn how to quilt, or you're wanting to increase your quilting skills, definitely check out one of those 2 classes. I'll make sure to link them below as well, and I hope you enjoy those. And then of course, don't forget to follow me here on YouTube, because I have been doing my Sew With Me series where I'm teaching you how to quilt one block at a time. I will make sure to link that below as well. We are finishing that quilt actually, and I think the finishing will come out next month, the 3rd Thursday of August. So we'll be finished with that quilt, and that one is so much fun. I will release a full pattern for that when it's all done in August, and I have a couple extra bonus patterns that I have done in there that I'm going to include so that you can use all of those fun skills to make some really cool projects. So definitely check those out if you haven't been following along. All right guys, that is going to be it for today's trunk show. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I have a lot of Christmas patterns, and I'll probably have a new one coming at the end of this year as well. I am working on my 12 days of quilty ornaments and 12 days of stitchy ornaments, so stay tuned for that because that will be releasing soon. Last year, I guess I released it a little bit late, and so you guys had asked for it earlier this year, so I'm really trying to get those out. I'm hoping to release them in October, so I'm working really hard behind the scenes to get all those ready for you, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy that series. So that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to thumbs up and subscribe if you did, so you don't miss out on anything. You can also hit that notification bell so you get notified anytime I upload a new video. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.